Welcome back. You are still watching Parliament TV, and we are coming to you live from the Johannesburg City Hall, where the memorial service of the late Dr. Frene Ginwala took place earlier. A life well lived is not mourned, it is rather celebrated. So these are some of the phrases that were used in her memory this wonderful afternoon. But I'm now joined by the current Speaker of the National Assembly, Mayor Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, who will also share in her fond memories of the times and the legacy of Dr. Frene Ginwala. Madam Speaker, this country stands in the shoulder of big giants, and Dr. Ginwala is one of them. What's your fondest memory or the earliest impressions of Dr. Ginwala?
I think the fondest memories for me was the day she was sworn in, the day we agreed at caucus that she would be the speaker.
Yeah.
It was a time we had gone to caucus believing that we had a candidate who was a woman, and she was the only one, and suddenly, oops, there was a surprise. There was a second candidate who was a male. But what for me was of interest was the fact that we could actually agree, finally engage, until we agreed that the only candidate the ANC will field is Comrade Frene, and Stofia was then the chief of the party. But the point is, Comrade Frene was a very fierce woman, very strong, very resilient, could be very harsh, could be very erratic, as I said, but what is important is that she stood for what she believed is right. I know of many leaders of my organization who were really threatened by just the mere presence of Comrade Frene in a meeting, because they knew that if there's anything which needs to be challenged, which she believes is wrong, and it didn't have to be issue around women only, generally about the ANC, Frene will challenge people will be offended, but Comrade Frene shall have raised the issues and will not retreat, by the way. So I think that, but she was true to herself. She was very honest, she had integrity, and earned a lot of respect amongst many of those of us, particularly younger. But of course, we used to get a whip every now and then, because with Frene, you can't be talking about holding a meeting about this and not talk about issues of women and how you are going to empower those women. I recall that she would say, you guys are busy organizing women into structures. It's good to organize women into structures, but what then is the agenda of those meetings? What are you discussing? How are you empowering these women? So Comrade Frene was an amazing soul. And for me, what I find very, I don't know, it's a strange one for me, is for her to leave a few months after the death of Comrade Jesse. Because they were very close. And when Jesse passed on that morning, my immediate reaction was, Comrade Frene is going to follow Comrade Jesse. She will not be able to take it. And that's exactly what has happened. She was, a tree has fallen, a huge one. And I wish our younger generation can read some of her writings, can actually go through some of the video footages, which are interviews which she's conducted, if only just to understand a bit about how she used to process issues and her thinking, and just to have an appreciation of a woman who wouldn't stand down because she's being ridiculed. No.
And I can imagine the younger generation cannot have a full appreciation of her role, especially back then and earlier in 1994, and when she had to be entrusted with such a huge responsibility the younger generation is not able to appreciate that because we've already made strides in terms of equality in South Africa. Things were not always like this. What made you as leaders, as women leaders at the time, to have so much faith in her?
Because she was a strong character, and she believed that if you all agree that you put a particular position on a matter, then all of you must be faithful to the decision and be honest, and you all work together and strive to achieve whatever it is that which you had set for yourselves. Like as I said, the typical was the 1991 conference. At the time, it was the issue of a particular percentage for women, and so it was not there. It was just not there. It was not talked about even in the continent. No one was talking about those kinds of issues. People were comfortable. Yes, the struggle for women continued, but no one ever said, let us have a ratio for women in the executive of our liberation movements. So when that happened, it was a historical milestone, because it was not just a lesson for South Africans, it was a lesson for the whole of the continent that women, if they like, can actually. We nearly disrupted conference. The conference actually came to a standstill for about 4-5 hours. Because after a long debate with people saying there can never be women in the structures, we don't need 30%, and so at some point, so we had to come up and say, okay, fine, the women are not going to vote at this conference. And that's what nearly broke the conference, because men know that people who anyway are the biggest delegations to conferences, who are the voters in the main, are women, and they are the ones who tend to vote for men. So I'm just saying the good thing is, I liked what the president said when he spoke, that we were not on our own. We had the support of a great man called Oliver Tambo, who really believed in the abilities of women, in capabilities of women, and really believed that women should be in the forefront of everything.
And eventually she came in as the Speaker of Parliament without a script, without preference. Like as you said, there was no to refer to. How fundamental are the foundations and the systems that she put in place in relation to your work today?
Very fundamental. Because every now and then, you see, Parliament is not an institution where you can just walk in and think that sometimes you'll use your common sense to deal with issues. There are rules. So you have to go to the rules. And the rules provide you with guidance on how to tackle different issues at different times. And of course, you also have a Secretary of the National Assembly, a pastor who has been there for quite some time and who has enormous experience. So you go in, you ask for advice, there's your legal team, and people will provide you with advice. So I believe that the fact that there was nothing, and now we have a rules book which actually provides leadership for everything. That for me was a lot of work. But I'll share you something on a lighter note, which we found in Parliament, which was very strange to us. There were hardly ablution facilities for women. I recall there was one in the old block. And women were up in arms. That's how we expected. But there were many ablution facilities for men. That just talks to you about the kind of parliament it was, the mentality, the thinking, the state of mind of those who were in power at the time. Never believing that one day there would be women who would be in parliament. So it's just those, for me, small things, but which are extremely significant. The other thing is, when we arrived, not the kind of heckling which is there now, of fights and so on. There used to be, we learned what was called heckling. And initially some of us would shrink, what is this, what's happening, only to find that it's allowed. But the manner in which you do it is respectful to the other members. The manner in which you engage with other members must be informed by mutual respect between the two, even if you differ. Or even the language. I mean, remember, we were new, we were raw. Some of us were coming from the bush. So the temptation at times when you were supposed to speak on a particular issue would be to divert and take people back to what had been happening in the country. And she had to manage those difficult dynamics. Remember, you had people who had been in government who were sitting on those benches. And when we looked at them sometimes, we had some of us deep hatred because we were young. We had to leave families. We had to go and fight in order for us to get freedom. So there would be those kind, and she was right in the middle of that and had to make sure that she creates a balance in the manner in which she handles issues and also ensure that finally there would be unity in the sense that you disagree, but the manner in which you disagree would be of mutual respect. That for me, I think the difference between, I think then it was very deep. This time, you see me, some of the challenges I'm confronted with, it's difficult, but I think that time, the fact that she was dealing with heavy, it was a transition. It was not easy for her.
Can you imagine? She had to have a high level of integrity. I mean, dealing with people who have been in government, probably undermining you, not believing that you're going to make it. You are confronted with something similar, I believe, at this current moment. How important is integrity in dealing with?
Absolutely important. Absolutely. One of the things I've learned in Parliament during this period is that truly, that thing, you doomed if you don't do, you doomed if you don't. I think I'm a living testimony of that. In that I live it every day in Parliament. Because sometimes you will take decisions because the rules provide for you to take a particular decision. And you find that you are under heat pressure from the opposition. And then when you take the decision, then it's your own party, some in your own party who will not agree with you and say, but how could you take such a decision? And forget that when you draw up rules, when you draft rules, you are passing those rules for everybody. You're not passing the rules for certain categories of people. You pass rules for all members of Parliament.
Just briefly, in closing, Speaker, I know the National Assembly is planning a special sitting to honor. What else are we going to do to preserve a legacy and memory? Former Speaker Mbete proposed something. What is Parliament going to do going forward?
There's a lot we're discussing together, guided by her, amongst others. One of the things we want to do, we want to create a bust of Frene in one of the committee rooms and name that committee room after her. And of course, Frene having been a very strong element in research, we may actually have to establish a research entity which we can call a Frene Ginwala. These are some of the things which we are throwing around for now. We've not necessarily agreed on those matters. We are yet to have a programming committee next week where we'll take a decision about a joint sitting, for instance, in honor of Comrade Frene. So a lot of the issues, it's just throwing issues, but there are no decisions. We will be taking decisions soon.
And we will be following up on those decisions.
Please do.
And making sure that the legacy of Dr. Ginwala is immortalized. Thank you very much, Speaker, for your time. And that is the Speaker of the National Assembly, Nosiviwama Pisangakula, also sharing her memories of the late Dr. Frene Ginwala. And we will be continuing with this broadcast shortly. Let's take a short break. Thank you a lot.
Following up on our commitments to the people, making your future work better. Parliament TV, channel 408 on DSTV.
And we continue with our live broadcast, a special broadcast from the Johannesburg City Hall, where we are honoring the life and the times of Dr. Frene Ginwala. And I'm wrapping up now with the presiding officer in the National Council of Provinces, Mama Winingwenya. Mama, thank you for joining us. What's your reflection on Dr. Frene Ginwala?
What I can say is that zohlala ngomkhumbula ngemisebenzi yakhe. As our constitution, it says ayicwase ngebala, and she was the first woman to be a speaker in parliament. Then as a presiding officer, I also learned from them. It's a difficult job, but because I've seen my senior leaders doing this deployment, I said I'm also going to be in their shoes, as it was Mama Dual, also Bomamu Balega, Bomamu Nosibiwe. Then I said Gauteng Dise, also she's coming from NSOP. Then I said I love Milendo.
Yeah.
Nami ndizawungena apa. We said we wanted to see women on top.
Yeah.
So let me get in also. Seeing that those who are younger than me, then they must see that there's nothing ehlulumfazi.
And obviously, younger women must learn from people like you.
Yes.
What can South Africans learn from the likes of Dr. Frene Ginwala? Bam describe njengomuntu on a high level of integrity. What can South Africans learn?
What people can learn, or what can I can say I've learned. When you look at the time that she was a speaker, she came out of nothing.
Yeah.
I asked myself that if it was me, am I going to manage to do what she had done?
Yeah.
Imagine get in the office, there's no laptop, there's nothing, you don't know where to start, there's no document, there's nothing. You are still going to deal with the constitution of the country for you to know how to do.
No rules.
Yes.
No point of order.
Yeah, the work that she have done, it was very tough. It was very tough, and it give us encourage that we must learn from her, that even things are so tough, but make sure that you do it and you do it nicely as she have been done.
What can you say to her family? They borrowed us this leader into yokuya exile. It was difficult for a family, for him, and obviously they borrowed her to South Africa. She spent most of her time serving this country.
What I can say to the family is to thank them for borrowing us as ANC on the deployment that she have done. Remember, to go to exile, you also leave your family. It's tough, but they've got that belief that she will come back. And when she came back also, she didn't have time for her family. He was working again for the organization because now we're on power. So to their family, I can say to them, thanks very much for us to borrow Mama for us to do our work for our country. We always remember her with good job that he have done to us. They are not only a loss to them, she is a loss even to us, all of us.
Indeed, we can never thank the family enough for the sacrifices that they have to make to release Dr. Ginwala, to fight for this country, do a lot of things for this country. And thanks a lot, Manana Winingwenya, for joining us and for sharing in your memories as well. And that brings us to the end of our live and special broadcast. We were coming to you live from the Johannesburg City Hall. It's a wrap. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Our constitution that we negotiated finally is unique in one way, or first time internationally that I've looked at constitutions, which makes non-sexism, non-racial, essential components of the constitution. I think we're still the only country in the world that have put that. That was a battle, because people were saying, no, why are you worrying about non-sexism, democracy? We said no, as women. By now we had formed in South Africa a women's national coalition with all political parties, all races in it. And from that public process, we had this demand that unless we put it in the constitution, democracy was not enough, because there are a lot of democratic countries in the world, or they call themselves, where the question of non-sexism did not feature. So that women's campaign produced what became Women's Agenda for Change, out of internal discussions amongst women. And then the battle was to make sure that those things, women's agenda for change, featured, and you will see it throughout the Constitution. And that is, I think it's important because we are unique in that. And it is, there's violations now when you see when women are being raped and so on, so that putting it in a Constitution didn't make it happen, but at least gave you constitutional guarantees. And it became an important part of the human rights component of our Constitution.
Following up on our commitments to the people, making your future work better. Parliament TV, Channel 408 on DSTV.